Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking some time out of your schedule today for our 12 tips and tricks in Dynamics 365 Business Central webinar. My name is Tess, and I'm the facilitator today. And before I pass it over to our presenter, I want to remind you that if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the questions area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. The session will be recorded and will be posted on our blog later today. So now I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today, Will Haber, who is a solution specialist on our Dynamics 365 Business Central team at Encore. So Will, I'll pass it over to you.
Hey, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I'm actually Will Haber. I'm on the team for Dynamics 365 Business Central. Solution specialist on the team, as Tess mentioned. And I'll be going over 12 tips and tricks for Dynamics 365 Business Central. So today, what we're going to go through is 12 tips and tricks that I find very useful for anyone starting out in the new application, as well as just getting to learn Business Central. One of them would be page personalization. So we'll get into that, like how you can personalize your client. Then another one would be multi-company access, the ability to select different companies within the system. There's also a pop-out windows feature, so the ability to focus in on the lines or focus in on a certain window within the application. There's an ability to do that within the web application. The ability to filter and save views. So that's another feature that I like to highlight because it's very, very specific to the application. The ability to save customized views. The ability to attach notes and files, to bookmark pages within the application to show on your home screen or your role center. The ability to search and enter data. So just different tips and tricks around how you search, how you enter, how you can do different things, like different numbering schemes and different mechanisms to actually have like an ability to shortcut MLS search dimensions. The ability to change descriptions on posted entries. So this is something that I like to highlight because this is something that's pretty invaluable to actually change descriptions on an entry table, and the ability to do that within certain entry tables. The ability to schedule reports through the job queue, and that's something to really take in mind and keep in mind when you're actually going through the application. The ability to modify columns. So that's kind of similar to page personalization, but the ability to actually modify the columns and show different things, move the columns around within the application and within a list. The ability to rename master records. So that's something that it's within most systems, but in Business Central, it's pretty seamless in the way you can do that. You also have the ability to change journal batches. So without any further ado, I'll get into it. So the first thing I want to go over is kind of personalizing and customizing your client. So these are kind of the steps that you take to actually personalize and customize the client. And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to go into the application. So if we take, for example, a list or a page. So for example, this is your role center right here. And the role center, what that is basically your home screen within the application. And within the application, you have certain tiles that we have within the application on the home screen. We have certain activities we can see, such as overdue sales invoice amounts, purchase invoice amounts, things that are relevant to what your daily tasks are. You have certain actions you can show as well within the application. You also have certain tables that you have access to as part of your role within the application. So so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the gears, and I'm going to go to personalize. And when I go to personalize, there's a view that I actually have access to over here. And so there's certain things that are hidden by default within the application, and there's certain things that are actually not hidden, like by default within the application. So anything that's hidden will have the gray slash marks around it. And also be grayed out as well. So if I wanted to show, for example, customer discount groups, and I have a relevant need to see that table, I can go to move or show, or even open the application. So I'm going to go show for now. And so I click that, and then let's say I don't need to see the business performance right now. It's not relevant to what I do. I can go to hide. And so that'll hide the actual part of that page. And so when I actually click done on the personalization, well, before I do that, actually, I'm going to show plus field. So there's an ability to add fields within the application. So right now there's no fields to be added, but if there were fields available on the page, they would show up here and you could drag them onto the actual page. So if I go ahead and click done, I can actually see that my personalization takes effect and the customer discount groups are shown here. And then you have at the bottom, the business performance is no longer showing. So you have a personalized view of what your actual client looks like. So that's kind of what personalization is in a sense. There's also the ability to customize lists and pages or cards within the application. So if I go to the customer list and I click on that, I have a few customers by default within the default database and default company. So what I can do now is I can actually go into this customer, or I can personalize the customer from here, the customer list page. So I do the same steps. I go to the gears and then I go to personalize. And then within the personalization, I actually have the ability, similar to what the role center is, to actually customize and remove certain personalizations or add certain personalizations. So for example, if I don't want to see the currency code, I don't need to see that on the customer list. I can go to hide this and it will disappear from my view. So I can also move the freeze pane as well too. So what the freeze pane is basically when you scroll, it's the pane that sets the actual application, like when you're scrolling. So if I set this to the freeze pane, when I scroll over, if there is more fields available, it would actually show the scroll as it would go through. So number and name would stay constant while you scroll through it. So if I click done, and I actually go to, and now the personalization takes effect, I can actually go into a customer card here. So let's pick trade research, for example. I can actually personalize a customer card as well, so a card page within the system. So if I go to the gears, I go to personalize. And let's say I don't want to see the contact name, for example. I can actually remove or hide this view. And I can also show it under show more. So it can show always or show under show more. So basically what that means is if I show always, it'll always be showing by default. But if I show more, it'll be showing on the show more tab. So like, for example, if like I show less here, it'll stay within the actual contact name. So when under show more, what happens is basically the contact name flows over to the show more. And then the another thing is I can remove like something like the phone number, for example. And then if I click done, the personalization takes effect. So if I go over here and I show less, the actual contact name won't be showing until I click show more. And that kind of hides that from the view. If for example, you don't need to see it right away, but you need to see it on the page as a view within the application. So that's the first tip I kind of wanted to go through. The second tip that I want to go through is how to switch companies. And to switch companies within the application, there's a couple different ways you can actually do that. So you can go to My Settings on the gears, and you can click the company and click the three dots right here, and it'll take you to your list of companies. So within your list of companies, you do have the ability to create a new company from here, or you have the ability to switch companies. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my company's default company. I click OK, and then I click OK again, and it restarts the application. And so while it's restarting the application, it's basically going through and showing you how within the company, it actually shows you what the new company setup looks like. So if I go through here and I go back into my company, so we're in a completely different company now. So we have the ability to use that. So another thing is, another ability that I kind of want to show you is, for example, if I wanted to change companies, I do have the ability to go through and do this. I have multiple tabs within my system. So I can do this. I can actually go and open up a new tab within Business Central. So I can have multiple companies showing at the same time. So if I'm working through this, this will bring me to the default company that I was logged into. But if I go ahead and I switch that company in the My Setting, go over here, go back to the Cronus company, which is the demo company essentially within Business Central. So now what I can do is, if I'm working in both companies, I can actually have both companies available as tabs while I work through the application. And this is something that's definitely a big feature within Business Central, the ability to access multiple companies at the same time. So as you see, you have my company, and then you have the Cronus Canada company. So the next tip I want to go through is the ability to filter and save views. So basically, the ability to filter and save views is pretty standard within the application. So what you can do is, I can either go to the search bar, or I can actually go to customers over here, which is on my home page as the default role. So what I have here is, I already have a couple saved views by default. So for example, I have a Canadian customer view, which is basically just a filter with the blank currency code, because all my customers are currently Canadian based on currency. So essentially what this is if the currency code is blank, so what that means is it's a saved view for within that. But what I can do is I can click the three dots right here. I can go save as, or I can click rename. So for example, if I wanted to rename this to something more relevant, such as local customers, I can do that. It takes the changes. And so basically now when I go back to the entire list, I can click all. This will take me to the entire list. But then if I go to local customers, it will take me back to that saved view. Another saved view that I have is basically this customer balance due between 5,000 and 10,000. And so the balance in local currency is between 5,000 and 10,000 in local currency. So this is kind of a saved view of what those two customers would look like between that range. Now, if I go back to the whole list, I can actually show you how to filter on a quick filter, like what I was showing you before. So let's say I need to look up something really quick, and I want to use the quick filter. So this is the global search, which searches all fields within the app, within the actual list itself. So if I go to tray, for example, I can search that, and it goes to tray research. So what tray research is basically the customer 20,000, and the customer 20,000 is based on the search that I use for tray. Now let's say I need to search for something a little more specific. So like let's say I can add a filter here, and I can filter on the actual field. So if I go to filter list by, add a filter here, and I filter by balance due and local currency. And I want all customers with a balance that is greater than 0. So I enter greater than sign and then 0. And so this will bring me to all the customers that have a balance due that's greater than 0 in local currency. So these are the 3 customers that currently have a balance due. So I can actually save this view. So I can go to Save As. And let's say I want to save this customers with outstanding balance. I click Enter. And it actually refreshes and it shows you that view as well. So that's kind of the tip on how to filter and save views. This is a very useful tool within the application to actually navigate and save the views and kind of work your way through it. So the next thing I want to go through is the ability to attach notes and files. So within a customer card, for example, if I'm in Tray Research and I want to attach notes and files, I can either do it from the list page itself, or I can do it from the card. And so what a list page is basically the list of records that you have. So this is a list page right here. So within the list page, I can actually do I can save a note here. So for example, if I want to save a note right from the list itself, I can go to the plus sign on the notes and let's say Tray Research on hold, for example. So I save the note. So basically it saves my user, the date I saved it, and what the note was. I can also save certain attachments to this. So for example, I can save links as well. But what I'm going to show you is actually how to save the attachments. So if I go to the inside the record, so for the record, you actually have to save it inside of the card itself, as the application works currently. And so within the application, we have a couple attachments here. So we have 0 right now. So what I can do is I can actually open up and click on this 0. And what this is called is a flow field. And so the flow field is basically a blue arrow or a blue field with like an underline under it. And what it does is it takes you to another table within the system. And so this is another table within the system for attaching documents. So I go ahead and I select a file. I can choose any type of file and save it into the system. So for a PDF, for example, or a picture, for example, I'm going to actually do a picture here as an example, but just to show you how I can save multiple things. So let me reload that. Give me 1 minute. Let me reload this. Let me actually open this up. Save this. So essentially, what it did was it saved the actual import, for example. So if I can actually preview the file. And so basically what this can do is it previews the file. And what it does is it shows you an actual preview of what the file is. So it takes you to the actual Excel document in this case. It also shows what the file extension is. It shows you when you saved it and who it was saved by and what the attachment date was when the attachment was generated. You can also flow this to sales transactions. So for example, if I wanted to flow this over to sales orders and sales invoices, I can actually flow this from the customer or the master record onto sales invoices and orders. So this gives you a preview. You open this up, and it'll actually display the attachment in whatever application was selected for the attachment, or whatever the attachment is in the application. Let me open that up. That's basically what the ability to save attachments and files within the application is. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And so what it does is it saves your application as one now. So that's the actual application saving mechanism. And so the ability to bookmark pages is the next thing I want to go through. So for example, if I wanted to save a customer page and I wanted the ability to bookmark that, or if, for example, if I want to save something else within the application, so for example, items, I go to items, and let's say I'm an inventory person, but I also deal with sales transactions. I can actually save this to the actual to the actual home page. So what it does is when you bookmark it, it saves it to the role center. And what the role center is your home page when you log in. So right now it's currently bookmarked. So if I remove that and I go back to my home page, I currently would not see the items. So right now it's currently not showing within the home page, but I can actually search for the items page again. And I can either open up the items themselves, or another trick is to actually go right here to the right-hand side, and you can actually click the bookmark directly from there. And now it's added to your home page. So when I go back, it automatically adds to the home page, and I can select it, and it'll take me right to the item table. So that's kind of an interesting trick and a very useful trick in the application to actually save things from your home, from any page, table, view to the actual home screen at that point. That's something to keep in mind. Another thing would be, in the next tip, would be the ability to search and enter data. So for example, if I want to search for, I've kind of showed you this already, how you can search on a quick filter. So for example, if I search test, it'll bring up the 2 test items that I have within the system in the quick filter. And then, so for example, if I want to search and enter data within the system, I can actually search, for example, any item on an advanced filter that I was previously showing you, where the inventory is greater than 0. And it'll take me to all my inventory where I have stock currently. So this is where you can kind of see that. Another thing is to actually save views and to show filtered views. You can actually show different pages in a list. You can show them filtered views. You can show them as tiles, or you can show them as tall tiles in this case, or you can show them as actual tiles. So there's 3 different views that you can actually have for any list, depending on what your preferences are. So entering data is the next thing I want to go through. So for example, if I go to a sales invoice and I create a new one, so I went to sales invoices, and it shows that it's grayed out because I'm currently on the page. I create a new one, and I give it a customer name and a customer contact. So basically what I do is I can go here. It'll actually save the invoice number, and then I can go to the customer name, trade research, for example, click OK. Now, let's say I want to enter data, and I have currently the system date is, you can check that in my settings. So right now the work date is 2/6/21. So if I want to do, the posting date is today plus 2D. I can actually do 2/6 or 2/7, and it'll actually save the filter as 2/7/21. So that's what currently the filters are. So 2/7, it'll take the current date, the current month, the current day and month of the current year. So I can also do T as well. And then I'll change to 2/9. So what the current date is within my system date. So what the system date is, and currently the system date is what today's date is within the system. So right now it's currently 2/9, but the work date is 2/6. And so that's kind of how you can enter different date fields within there. Now, in terms of different quantity fields, like for example, numbering schemes, you can actually go into an item here. And let's say I wanted to order 50 of these, but I don't want to type in 50. I can do 10 times 5, and the system will automatically do the math for me. So what that does is it multiplies to 50. And then so it's based on the unit price. So right now, currently, if I wanted to do that, I can actually do calculations on the fly within the system. So 10 times 5 is 50 in that case. But let's say I wanted to sell half of these, for example. So I can do divided by 2, and it'll take me back to 25. So that's kind of how you can search and enter data within the system. And there's just different tips and tricks. I'll be sending out the presentation, and it's kind of like the presentation essentially is it shows you the different tricks, the different tips of how you enter and search data, all the different shortcuts involved there. So there's a couple different ways you can actually do that within the system. Now, in terms of filtering and saving views and searching and entering data, that's probably the most useful thing for data entry. Now, in terms of, there's a couple different things you can actually do. So the numbering field, if you select the number series from the 3 dots right here into the application, so basically you can select the number series, and what number series are within the application, they are standard number codes that you can set up in numbering sequences per type of master record. Like for example, items can have multiple ones, customers, vendors, whatever master record you have within the system, there are number series codes that you can have set up. So that's kind of what the entering of data is. Now, I'm going to show you an interesting thing or an interesting trick that was kind of shown to me a few months back. It's within the system, and it's very useful within the system in the application. So if I go back to Business Central, and I go back to the home page, for example, what you can do is to always go back to the home page if you're on a list. You can go click on the company name, and it takes you right to the home page. So within the home page, you have the ability to actually navigate to, in certain cases, the entry tables. But I'm going to go ahead and search for it. So right now I'm going to go ahead and go to the general ledger entries. And so within the search, there's pages and tasks. There's also reports and analysis. And the entry tables are located in the reports and analysis section of your search. So I'm going to go ahead and save this to the bookmark as well. I'm going to go ahead and search for it. And so right now, I have this list. And let's say I have an entry or a posted entry that has a description that's incorrect. Someone posted an incorrect entry with an incorrect description, and I need to change that. So what I can do is I can go to Edit List. And so, for example, if this is the wrong date, this should be February of 2020. Let's just say it is, like it was posted in February of 2020. I can change this to Feb 2020. I can actually change that, and it'll take effect. So now, currently, when that posted entry is shown, it'll say February of 2020 instead of March of 2020, and this goes for the general ledger entries. And changing descriptions on posted entries is something that I would say that it's something that you need to do on a one-off basis at most, but I wouldn't make it a habit because posted entries within the system are very crucial and critical to actually keeping data consistency, and you really don't want to be modifying those records. But it is a good tip to know if there is an incorrect description on a posted entry, that you can edit it. So that's changing descriptions on posted entries. Now, the next tip that I want to show you is scheduling reports. And with scheduling reports, you can actually go into the system, and you can actually, what you can do is you can actually do it one of two ways. You can go to the actual home screen in here. There's a report inbox by default within the report section. So for example, if I want to go to the report inbox, I click the drop down, I go to show queue. And so what reports are within the system and how they run on a schedule is through the job queue. And the job queue has job queue entries. And so for the job queue entries, you can adjust exchange rates, you can delegate approval requests. Different reports within the system can be scheduled either on a nightly basis, on a recurring basis. So for example, if I want to open this one up, this is the delegate approval request for approvals. So right now, currently, what we notice right away is that the status is ready, but the earliest start date was 102. So it shows your last ready state. It shows when your earliest start date is on the actual report. So it's scheduled to run tomorrow according to the system at 1:02 p.m. It's a recurring job, and the number of minutes between runs you can define as well too. So by default, it's going to go to 1440, but you can actually change the interval between how often the job runs or the report runs within the system. The inactivity timeout period, you can also set that too in terms of minutes. So this is basically where a job with a status on hold is automatically restated. And what on hold is basically, it's basically a report queue or a job schedule that's been delayed. And you can actually do that for reports that are in error status, and you want to actually explore and see why that's an error, or why that's an actual why the job itself is stuck and in process for whatever reason, whatever error message it would be. So what I can do is I can go to related, job queue, and log entries to actually show what the logs are on this job. So right now, currently, you see all the different statuses involved here within reports. So within the job queue log entries, you have the success, the status of how often it was run or what status was on it. So if I filter by the list, I can actually see what the status fields are. So right now, there's 3 different options. There's a success, so it ran successfully. There's an in process. So basically, it's currently in process, and it's either going to finish with a success or an error. And then there's an error status. So what the error status is basically if there's any errors in here, there isn't, but what it shows is the error and the description of the error. And based on the description of the error, you can then modify the job queue to reschedule it. This is the description of what it was successful for in this case. So you can automatically open this up by double clicking on the end of the field length. So similar to Word or Excel. So essentially what happens is that you have the start date, when it was ran, what the start time was, how long the job took, and if there was an error message, it would display here. You can then open up the record to view the error message. So this is a very useful feature to scheduling reports within the application. And you can actually schedule concurrent reports to run on different tiers within the system to actually have the ability to schedule reports and to run them concurrently or to run them in parallel or sequentially. Because as you're going through your business, you're going to see reports that you want to schedule, you want to run on a queue. You may not want to run things overnight. You may want to run them overnight. So you can set all these different parameters to have overnight jobs. You can also have jobs that run during the day. So you have the flexibility to schedule when and how the jobs are run. So if I go back to the presentation, and the next thing I want to go through is to modify columns. So similar to personalizing a page, what you can do is here. So for example, if I'm on the customer page, if I go back to the customers, and so if I'm so basically once I go back to the customers, I can actually see different things within the application. So for example, I have the details, I have the attachments for a customer, for example, Trey Research in this case. So you can see the customer statistics, you can see the balances. But let's say I have a certain role that I don't need access to actually see certain statistics within the application. I can actually remove these fact boxes is what they're called. So if I go to the gears and I go to personalize, similar to what we were doing before with personalizing the page, I can actually personalize this list, and I can remove this customer statistics, so I don't have to see, I don't need access to it basically. So I can hide this, and then once hidden, it'll actually turn to the slash marks, and then once I actually click done, similar to what we saw before, it'll actually won't appear anymore. Another thing I can do is I can add a field. So in the customer list, there's a lot of available fields. So I click plus field, and so currently, actually, if I go into the card itself, I can keep the personalization on. And I go to plus field. And so we have a list of available fields here. So for example, if I want to see on the customer card the number or the search name or the name too, so what the alternate name of the customer would be, I can go ahead and drag this onto the page right under name, or under IC partner code. So I can actually drag that right there. I can move this as well too. So currently what I can do is I can move this up. I can move that over there. And so when I can click, I can actually do that. And then I can, for example, if I wanted to remove the block feature from the page, I can actually do that as well. I can hide that. And so now what it does is it updates on the page and it updates on your personalization view. So if I go ahead and click done, it will save the changes on that card and for every card with each customer. So this is a very useful tool, personalization, and just basically change the ability to actually personalize your client, to change columns, to add columns, to remove columns. And it's very useful within the application. There's a lot of standard fields that sometimes they're not shown within the actual page, but you can actually personalize and add those columns as you need to. So let's say I wanted to change the name of a master record. I can change that, for example. So Trey Research, let's say they have an operation that's limited. So I can go LTD. And so what it does is there's no save button within the application, but once I tab out of a field, it saves the application by default, and it turns into a save status within the application. So let me do that again just to kind of show you that. So limited, for example, if I spell it out, I can actually do that. I can tab out, and it goes saving and then save. So it saves it to the database. So LTD, let's say I wanted to change this to LTD, but I don't want to save this. I can actually click escape, which is what I just did, and it'll change it back to whatever the previous value is. So escape within the system is similar to Control Z within any Word application or Microsoft application. And what that does is it reverts the change back to what it was previously, what the value was previously. So if LTD was entered, and I changed it back, and I wanted to change it back to limited, like I didn't want to save that, I can actually click escape within the field, and it'll revert back to the previous value. So that's the next tip I wanted to go over. The last thing I really wanted to go through, and this is very useful for the accounting and finance people, the ability to change journal batches. And that's a very key feature within the application. And I always like to highlight this because it's a very useful feature. So I go to the general journal. And what general journals are basically, there's the way it's set up in the system is there's templates, batches, and then journals themselves. So templates are like the master, essentially. Batches are the different batches you can post in. So for example, you could split it out by user or by operation. Let's say you have multiple users in your accounting department. The recommendation there would be to actually split it out by batch when you're posting. So if I go to, there's two ways I can get there. I can actually go to the templates themselves. So within the templates, I can go to the general template. I can go to related, template, and then batches. And so this will take me to all my batches associated with my general template. And so within the general journal batches, we have the default batch, and we also have the monthly batches. So currently that's like based on operation, but let's say I wanted to change it to another batch. I can actually rename these batches. I can change it to a user's name. So for example, my batch or someone else's batch within the system. I can do that as well. So that's kind of what you can do there. But you can actually go into the journal, and I'll show you how to actually change the journal batches directly from the journal. So we're in the default journal right now. And let's say I want to get back to the monthly batch. What I can do is I can go to the batch name over here. I can click on the three dots. I can change this to monthly. And so I click OK. And so that changes right back to the monthly batch. So you see the lines have changed and everything is updated to actual monthly batch settings. So that's kind of what the ability to change batches are. So now I'm going to go back and go ahead and go back to the default batch. And I'm going to show you an additional trick here. So let's say I wanted to post only what's visible. So like I don't want to post both these lines. I only want to post one line, and I want to make that line visible within the batch or within the journal itself. So what I can do is I can actually filter on a value within one of those lines. So for example, I filter on the amount is equal to $5. I can type the field name in here. I can click $5. It'll change to that. And so when I go ahead and I go to preview posting, so you can either preview a posting within the application, or you can actually post the application within the journal. You can also post and print. So what that does is it posts the journal batch, and it will print a report of what you posted. So I'm going to go ahead and go preview posting here. And so when I go ahead and go preview posting, it'll actually take me to the posting preview. And so what this is basically all these related entries within the system, such as GL entries, tax entries, and bank account entries. So these are all the entries that would be generated from a posting of that singular line. And so we see in the actual lines, if we go to the number of entries, and this is what a flow field is, it'll take you to another table. So we see this is what the entry is comprised of. So right now it's going to the purchase, domestic and services product posting groups. It's going to the bank account as the balancing account. There's $4 worth of the posting, and then $1 is going to another GL account. So in general, the balancing account will be this other test GL account that I created. So right now you see the debits and credits within the posting, but it's only for that line. So if I want to go back, and I actually want to unfilter this, and I go back and I go ahead and go preview posting again. So currently there's an error, but basically what happened is that if I change this to, for example, services over here, this will get past the error. I go preview posting. And so within the preview posting, we have the GL entries, the tax entries, and the bank account, similar to before. So now we have two separate entries. So we're going to have the $5 entry and the $6 entry. The $5 entry is shown as previously, and then the $6 entry would actually have this entry as well. So that's kind of how you can post what's visible within the system, within the entry tables, and see how it's reflected within the entry tables. It's very useful because if you have a batch of over 100 lines or multiple lines, you can post only what you know is ready to be posted, and the rest of it you can actually post at a later date. So that's important, and that's a critical feature for the accounting and finance teams, to post only what's visible and the ability to change batches. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor, and that's really what I had today for different tips and tricks. And I'll open up the floor for questions. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Will. So yes, if anyone has any questions, please enter them into the questions area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We have had some questions that have come in while you're presenting, so I will get started with those. So the first question is there a desktop application for Dynamics Business Central, or is it only web-based?
Great question. So there is a desktop application. There's the on-premise version of Business Central, and there's also the cloud-based version. So it's split up into the on-premise version, which is basically the desktop application where you can run your SQL Server applications and anything you need to within a desktop application. And you can also host it on the cloud as a web client. And then there's the SaaS-based version, which is the web version that I was showing you currently within the application.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is there a way to automatically update characteristics, i.e. a description of posted GL transactions based on an external mapping that is dynamic?
That's a great question. So an external mapping that's dynamic. In terms of that, I would say there's a way to update the GL entries, but in terms of like an external mapping, I'd have to get more information into what the mapping would be. So let me follow up on that, and I'll get back to you on that.
All right, perfect. I will share their information with you, Will. The next question is, can the list of bookmarks be reviewed and edited?
Yes. So basically, if I go back into the application and I show you what the bookmark list is, so if I go over here and I go into the bookmarks, back into the bookmarks. Actually, let me just go back to the home screen. I'll just go back into over here. So essentially, yes, there is an ability to actually look at the bookmarks and see which bookmarks are actually available within the application. So in terms of the bookmarks, there is a list over here. So if I go to, so you see the application over here, you have the different administration, you have depreciation books, data migration, and data migration settings. So if I wanted to bookmark this one, I can actually do that. Now, there isn't a specific list. If you're meaning more a list of actual bookmarks themselves, there is no actual list of bookmarks. So that's kind of what in that sense, there is not a list for actual reviewing the bookmarks and like how many bookmarks there are.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can you set up default views for roles, or does the user have to personalize their view themselves?
So you can. That's a great question. So what you can do is you can actually go to the profiles and roles. And so within the profiles and roles, there's a couple of default ones that are set up. So for example, accounting manager. Let's go ahead and open that one up. So what you can do is you can actually personalize the roles. You can actually enable personalization. You can use it as a default profile. You can disable personalization. So for example, if you wanted to disable the ability for the user to personalize their views, you just want the user to have their standard view, you can do that as well. You can show it in the role explorer. So for example, if I click this, it can actually show you in the My Settings. It'll appear in the My Settings when you click on the role. So that's kind of where that lives. So in terms of the actual My Settings, that's how you can show it in the Role Explorer. You can enable the role as well. So if I click Enabled here, and now it's available within the roles. You can also customize the role as well too. So that's the key within the application, to actually customize the pages. So if I click Customize Pages, it'll take me into a configuration mode where I can then customize the entire role for the user, or the profile that the user would be using at that point. And you can actually split that out into different user groups as well. So that's kind of where you have that ability. It's a very powerful ability, and I would say it's a very useful thing within the application. So you can actually, for example, if I wanted to remove this, and then I click Done, it'll actually customization complete successfully, and you can now close the browser tab and go back to your application. So now it's a customized role at that point.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is, are we able to limit some users' access to adding, removing, or editing certain fields in either the customer card or vendor card?
Yes, you can do that through permissions. So there's certain things within the system that you can restrict via permissions, and also via user groups. So if you go to the users table, for example, so within the users table, I have a few different users over here. So if I go to the admin, I can actually, you see that there's a couple different user groups that I have assigned to myself. And so these user groups can have multiple users within them, and you can actually restrict certain people's access, certain groups' access. So for example, the accounting team, if you wanted to restrict their ability to look at inventory, you can actually do that within a group, or you can do it on an individual user basis as well.
Perfect. The next question is, what is the best method to migrate QuickBooks past transaction history to Business Central?
Great question. So within QuickBooks or within Business Central, you can actually do it through an assisted setup. So there's an assisted setup to actually migrate over data. And these assisted setups are found throughout the application. They're anything from currency to different setting up Outlook, setting up emails. So what you can do is you can actually migrate your data. So you can set it up through cloud migration to the on-premise, or you can import existing data from your former system. So it's kind of a setup guide, and it goes through each step in the process. And you can import from Excel, you can import from QuickBooks Online, or you can import from QuickBooks. So there are options to use the data migration tools. You can also use the journals to upload them as well.
All right, thank you very much, Will.
Thank you.
We have one last question, and what that is, what's the difference between opening and editing in Excel?
Yes, great question. So essentially, the difference between both of those is on any page, you have the ability. So if I go back and I go to the page itself, it has that feature. So like the user page, for example. So if I'm on the user page and I click the page action over here, there's the ability to open in Excel and edit in Excel. You may be asking yourself, what's the difference there? So open in Excel is basically giving you a raw export of what the actual fields would be, what the tables would be, and it's in a filtered view. So what I mean by that is if I open in Excel, it'll actually give me all these columns that are filtered currently in a view in Excel. So right now my Excels are going on a few issues, but I actually, what it does is it basically gives you a filtered view of the username, the full name, and the authentication email. Now, the ability to edit in Excel is, I currently don't have it set up, but what it is basically you can set up a data connection between Business Central and Excel, and you can update all like columns in real time. So for example, if I wanted to change the username full name over here, but I didn't want it, I wanted to do it for multiple users in this case, because I need to do updates. I can actually go to the page and edit in Excel. And within edit in Excel, I can actually go and edit the username descriptions, publish in Excel, those changes, and it'll upload into the application. That's the difference there, basically.
Awesome, thank you. So we're almost at time and there haven't been any more questions. So Will, if you could go back to the PowerPoint, I just have a few things I want to highlight for some of our upcoming webinars before we close out today. So all of our webinars can be seen on our events page, and I'll add that link to the chat. We have 2 webinars for how to do Dynamics GP processes in Dynamics 365 Business Central, as well as what's new in Business Central in the release wave 1 of 2021. So I'll add that link to the chat, and I'm going to add 2 other links to the chat as well that are about receiving emails from Encore. So if you'd like to receive our newsletters or our product and service emails or know about other upcoming events in the future, you can sign up through that link. And I also added a link for Encore Care Unlimited, which is our support plan. And the link explains the different features that are involved there. And you can always contact us if you have any questions. So thank you, Will, for the information, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So have a great rest of your day, everyone.